All right, let's get this show on the road. So I just wanted to check in real quick before we get into the meat of today's discussion. I just wanted to kind of just see where people were at. Like, has anybody been doing any of the lesson five stuff yet? On or well, I'm sorry, not even lesson five, but any of like how far? Where are we with the? Because I haven't actually made the assignment for it. So where are we with the um lessons on these things? As you guys, have you guys been getting any of these done? Knocking any of the whatever the audio kinetic wise certification thing? Has anybody done the 301 yet? Has anybody gotten any of them done? Three of
Yeah,
them
I
done?
got through lesson
Okay.
5
Okay.
at the end of last week.
Okay. So William Ramon's got some. Anybody else have any knocked
I've,
out?
I've honestly only done the first one.
Okay. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm with him there. I only did the first one. I just moved, so I'm like super far behind right
That's fine.
now.
No, I mean I haven't assigned it, so I just want to try to just get a vibe on where people are. And that's fine. And so I'm assuming if you haven't spoken up, you haven't done any of them yet. Is that
I
what's
did the first three, but
okay? Okay, well, good. Good. That's good news. Okay. Um, okay. Cool. Nice. Okay. Cool. Um, if you haven't done any of them, that's fine. It's just, I mean, you're gonna have a pretty good amount of work for, I mean, as for those of you that have gotten relatively far on these things can attest to, they're these can get pretty burly, and they keep ratcheting up on complexity here, myself included. I'm like sitting here like, like it's pretty complicated. But the thing is though, what I found, just like what we did with any of this stuff, the first time through is really complicated, and the next couple times you start to get it. So like the stuff that we're doing today and the stuff that we did last time, I think these are like four and five. I think. Hey, so Roman, did you say you got through five? Is that what you said you were?
Yeah,
How, like, what'd you think? What are your thoughts or tips for
at
people?
first it's definitely a lot to take in, but even by like lesson 4, I kind of found myself like going through that one where like it kind of just made sense. Like I didn't know exactly like what to do for like I mean, you have to get into like a little bit of code. So it's like that stuff like I just like
Just follow.
obviously don't know
Yeah.
exactly what to do, but it's like it makes sense of how I'm doing it and what I'm
Okay.
trying to accomplish. So like that kind of things like feels like something where like I could actually go in and do it with a just like a little help from like
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think, and that's exactly it. Because the thing is with the code stuff here, and so sections four and five, and I don't even know. I think six might be even a little bit. Have it there. It gets into the code stuff, and I have a little bit of background in some code, but like very, very, very minor. And so I recognize and I can understand some of the stuff, but it's like if you're looking at it from with new eyes, it's complicated, and it's putting this to work, like actual work, on a real game would be pretty tough because you've only gone through this one time. But what I do find is that if you go through this a few times, like just the way I prepare for these is I go through, I basically go through and do the whole lesson, then I take the test, then I go back and I redo it, and I take all the notes that I do for the class, and then I try to redo it again, demonstrating it for myself. And by that third time, I find that I really have a pretty good grip on it. And when I say good grip, I mean I can get through it. I don't mean that I'm like have a solid grip on it, but like Ramon was saying, like what you can do is you're not supposed to be this pro coder coming out of this thing, but what it does do is it gives you the principles and also a reference to go back to. So when you're called upon to do this in real life, that you're like, okay, I remember kind of how this is supposed to go. But more than anything, it's going to be sort of the principles on this thing. So I guess what I'm saying also is I sympathize with you. This is if you've not had any code before, this sections are really can be really kind of complicated. I would like it's one thing to just follow along, but even the test on number five was pretty tough. It's like it starts to like assume you start not assume, but it's expecting you to understand what the code is doing in terms of things like scope and some of this stuff. So we're gonna go over that a little bit today, but I want to focus on kind of the bigger picture and applying this to the bigger picture as we cruise along here. So before we get into all of the nitty gritty stuff, there, what we want to let's just talk a little bit about what we're trying to accomplish with this. So up to this point, what we did on the last one in section 4, which by the way, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I hadn't posted those. I posted the lectures for last week yesterday because I thought I had posted them, but apparently I hadn't. So both those lectures are up. If you need to take a look at those, if you weren't here for that, but they're up. But what we did last week was we learned how to post events. So 2 weeks ago on part 3, what we did is we figured out how to just post events using the pre-built scripts that Audio Connect gives us. So anything with the AK is the pre-built script that basically, and you can go and hack those things apart, but Audio Kinetic, when you do the integration, they have a bunch of built-in scripts that you're allowed to use and that are pretty useful for things like trigger on enter and trigger on exit, and some of those kind of things are really, really useful, just the kind of pre-built stuff. But then there's going to be a lot of cases where we're going to have to integrate our own code into these systems, and so where we want to do things like footsteps. So that's what we did last week, is figure out how to trigger post an event. So that term post an event, what we're doing is we're saying do the thing in Wwise, do the thing in Wwise, do the thing in Wwise. So and that's kind of where we left off last class, was talking, well, we were doing things like the footsteps for the running animation or the sprint animation, which is really useful. And so learning how to attach calling functions and triggering events based off of what's happening on custom things in the game. That's kind of what we were looking for last class. Now what we want to do is we want to move one step deeper, and we want to start doing our game syncs. So actually, let's go ahead and share the screen, and let me pull up. Let's go ahead and pull up the projects. Oops. Let's do the Unity side of things. So let's pull up on Unity, and we'll open up the Wwise project. Give it a second here. I tried to get this back to its original state because I was mucking with it for these lessons, but I might have screwed something up in there. But if you recall, when we're in Wwise, we have all of our audio stuff happening over here. All these are our events, right? So these are like down here we have our ambient campfire play, ambient campfire stop. We have all these, like, I don't even know how many we have in here. Oh, they have dialogue lines. So there's a whole bunch of different events that happen down here. But there's also the side thing, like, so the events are like basically playing sounds and stopping sounds, playing sounds, stopping sounds, that sort of stuff. But then we have this whole other side of Wwise where we want to be able to do other deeper control, things like well, our game syncs, essentially. So we have our game syncs, we have switches, states, and game parameters. Triggers, I haven't used any of the triggers really. I don't really understand those ones yet. But switches, states, and game parameters. So what did we use switches for? Like, does anyone remember what were switches being used for? Like, what's an example of switch usage?
For when your footsteps crossed different textures on the ground to change which footstep containers you're using.
Yep, that's a biggie. That's a great example, and that's like I would say probably one of the most common ones out there. It would be sorry, I'm trying to find the chat window here.
Yeah, there was also in the Wise Adventure game, also like already included the switches being used for like melee attacks, where like you swing your sword and like maybe you hit barrel sounds different from like if you hit a boulder.
Yeah. So like if we look, so we can take a look and see what they've got there. We've got our general, we've got our player. So we've got day or night, distance to player, surface type, and then we've got player movement speed, pick up to items. So these are going to be some of our switches in here. So this is what we've seen: surface type. We've got most things like wood, like that's the one we've probably kind of seen before. Distance to player, which is like, I guess they're basically just going to say, like, if they're going to play the different sound effect, if it's close, far, or medium. So it's going to trigger a different sound effect based off of its distance, so it has a different quality of sound, like timbre or something like that, day or night. So if it's a night sound versus a day sound, and we're actually going to see a little bit more of this kind of thing coming up. And then you're saying like weapon type, like if it's an axe, a dagger, or something like that. So if you're doing an attack, it's going to play with the sound effect based off of what whatever weapon you're holding at that particular time. So there's a lot of different uses for these things. So we're going to take a look at it in terms of footsteps, and then okay, that switches. What do we use for states? Like, what's an example for states? Oh, Eric, sorry, I didn't see that.
Didn't
That was good. Oh, go ahead.
didn't states we like messed around with like the campfires or whatever?
Yeah, well, I mean, you could do something like campfire, like a state. So yeah, I mean, the states are gonna be more for like big environmental changes. So like when you switch to a menu, or like when you switch to a menu and all the sounds vanish, or at least go like dull, or like what did we use it for in Cube? Remember that?
We used it for like the quad power up. Technically, whether or not the player was in water, even though we didn't have water in that level, if the player was alive or dead.
Yep. Yep.
The state on spawn, I
Yep.
suppose, as well.
So yeah, it's basically like what the kind of it's going to affect a lot of global not global. That's a bad term right now, because we're going to be using that term later today. But when you want to do a lot of changes, like a bunch of changes at once, I mean, it doesn't have to be a bunch of changes, but that's generally what we're going to be using that for, when there's changes in the environment type of thing. And then we have game parameters. So what they showed here, so we have music states. That's actually what we're going to be working on a little bit here. Player combo, left swing, right swing, top swing. Okay. Interesting. So they're using states for, depending on, like, I'm assuming that's like the weapon state, which is, that's an odd, that one feels like an odd state thing to me, but sure enough. And then we have game parameters, so RTPCs. So RTPCs are things that are going to be continuously monitored. So both these states and the switches are something that's like it's like having a knob on a thing where it's like a clicking knob. Like basically you have like a choice between like a couple different things. And then we're going to have, but our game parameters are going to be something that's going to be where it's going to be something that's constantly monitored between the game and and Wise. So things like, for example, for this would be something like, well, we use it for player health in Cube, but it could be also things like the time of day. So what animals or what ambience should be playing based off the time of day, or things like engine RPM if you're playing like a racing game, or those kind of things where it's just going to be constantly checking and adjusting something in Wise based off of some parameter inside of Wise. So that's kind of what we're going to look at today, is figuring out how to control these things from Unity. And so that's what we're going to dive in and start looking at here. So I am going to start out with certification 5. So what was this one called? So what we're going to look at is looking at the state component right here. And what they've done is they've got this like wizard's house right here. You got the little wizard dude right there. And what we want to do is when we enter the house, because it's a magic space, they've got this thing set up, these states set up over in Wise, where if I remember, like, that basically are going to allow it to change something. And I think what they were changing was they're pitch shifting and adding a tremolo effect. So if we look on our game syncs and our switches, I think we're doing states. We're going to do music states. And so we're going to do these magic zones. So they've created this magic zone right here. So we've got essentially they've got a none, but then they have inside the house or outside the house. So when you go inside the house, it's going to create a state change right here. And it's got a transition time of 1 second. So what they've done is on our audio buses, I think they basically went through and just added a state change right here. So if we look on our states on our master audio bus, I think I don't know if there might be some stuff somewhere else in there, but I haven't. You have to kind of comb through to find it. But in here we've got our states, and so basically it's our magic zone. We have MZ1 outside the house and MZ2 inside the house. And what it's going to do is it's going to change the pitch. It's going to pitch everything, what is that, up? Yeah, it looks like it's pitching everything up when we get inside the house just a little bit. They said they were doing a tremolo effect, but when I was looking, let's see, I don't see. Okay. Brick wall, peak limiter, Wise flanger. So they're just using that. Let's see, they might have that set up as RTPC states. Yeah, they do have this one going on here. That's where it was. So where that was basically in the effects on the master audio bus. So what this is going to do is it's going to affect everything if it's on the master audio bus. And they're using share sets. And if we look at here, what they've got on their states is the inside. If they're inside the house, it's going to use the wet dry mix. So basically this effect is running, and if they're outside the house, it's just running 0. I don't know if I think that if I would actually set up my busing that way, but that's the way they did it, and that's fine. So they have interesting. Oh, so then what they're doing is also they're watching the player movement speed. So the faster you're moving, the bigger the LFOs it's happening. It's kind of strange. So it kind of gives you this kind of dreamy, weird effect. So they're trying to create this, like if you're in a wizard's house, it creates this dream state, so to speak. So what we want to be able to do is control these states right here. So back over in here, what we want to do is in our wizard's house, we want to be able to when we go in this house right here, we want to trigger this event. So, well, actually that's exactly it. So if we want to use those triggers, this is some of the stuff we've seen before. So if I go to music zones and wizards, they're calling this the music region right here. I'm going to pull this over here. So we've got this mesh collider right here, and all it is just essentially it's the shape of this music region. And so they're using, what we want to use is these colliders as the trigger event right here. So they've got this mesh collider, and it says is trigger. We don't have to worry about any of this stuff right here, but when it is trigger, by default when it says is trigger, that means it's not really a solid object anymore. There's no physics associated with it, so you can actually run through that. Because now instead of we're using this as a thing in the scene, we're actually using it as an invisible trigger. So when we go through this thing, it's going to trigger this. So what we want to do is first is going to, like the same thing we've seen before, is we're going to want to do a let me see. Just want to make sure this. We want to add an AK state script. So let's do AK state script. And what this is going to do is basically what we want to have happen is we want to set the state of the place in here. So the state, if we double click on this, it's going to allow us to choose, well, if we have it closed up, this is our magic zone right here, and we have MZ2 inside house. We want that to happen when we cross into that. That's the state that happens. So this is, just to be clear, this is the connection between Wwise and Unity. So you can do anything you want with the scripts upstream from this, but this is the connection that connects Wwise with Unity right there. And we want this thing to go, as soon as I cross the path to go into there, I want this to happen. So what we want to do is say on trigger enter and get rid of the start right here. And now what we need to do right now is say what we want to have enter when we enter this house right here. So I'm going to use our AK trigger enter. And I'm going to drag my player onto that. So put this, well, yeah, I'll explain it. AK trigger enter. So what this says right here is this AK trigger enter right here is controlling this AK trigger enter right here, because they're on the same object right here. And basically this is saying I want it to only trigger based on the player, because if I don't have this right here, anything that's in the room is going to trigger this thing. Anything that's on the inside of this collider is going to actually, or this mesh collider is going to actually trigger the event. So we need to refine this so that it only triggers when the player crosses this thing. So at this point, when the player crosses in through here, it's going to trigger that event and hit and set the state over in Wwise. But now what we want to also have happen is when we leave, we want to have the same thing happen. So what we want to do is we want to set the state when the player leaves. So to do this, it's not just an exit. We actually have to do AK state. We have to add another separate AK state in here. Let me just double check what I've got here. Cool. So let's do this another AK state. So the AK state is on this one. We want this one to be when the player leaves this thing, AK trigger exit. And we want to set the state on this one to, what did I say? Yeah, I did that right, MZ2. I want this one to be outside the house, so that it goes back to the way it was normally. So you can set up tons of these things throughout your scene. And I mean, just even this seemingly modest game right here can get really complex very quickly. So I've mad appreciation for these like really big complex games. Trying to manage this stuff, it's insane. So let's actually do let's finish this one out. So I want to trigger on exit, and I want to get rid of destroy, get rid of start. So when this is exiting, and once again we have to say we have to define this AK trigger exit. So I'm going to say AK trigger exit. And so what we want to say is when the AK trigger exit right here, spread that out, that I also need to assign this to the player. So when the player leaves and comes in and out of this space right here, that's what's going to trigger these states. So let's actually see if this thing works. Save this, and so what I'm going to do is I want to profile the game on this one. So F6, oops, F6 to profile the thing. Let's turn off all my filters. Yeah, I guess we want to do states. Yeah, because that's what we wanted. Okay, so by default, it's going to be like this. And if I sync this thing, you're just going to get a torrent of information. Let's just take a look at it, actually. Let's close this out. And let's just double check, see if that's working. Let's go to Wwise. I'm going to connect this thing. So we have a bunch of stuff flying by right now. Not tons. We have heartbeats. We have windmills. Some of those sound effects playing. Cool. Let's get out of that for just a second. So what we want to do is we want to filter this so we can actually see these things happening, because it gets a little too big for us to see. So we just want to focus on states. So I'm going to select none and just follow the states, apply, and let's monitor this again. So I'm going to start this game up, and what I'm going to do is move this over here so maybe I can get the game so we can kind of see this happen when the game is over here. That should be good enough. Oh. So we can see even as I go through that, because that little hexagon or octagon, we can see that the state changing. So it totally worked. And we can tell that even when I went to that little cove thing, that it turned off, because it basically has this, I mean, I couldn't really hear it. It was pretty subtle, the changes right there. The music pitched up a little bit there. But the changes were subtle. But rather than care, I don't want to focus on the audibility of this thing. That the fact that we're getting our game to talk to Wwise is successful right there. So you can see that it's changing, the state changes are happening right here, which is a good thing. And so we can also, I mean, if we wanted to pretend on these things, where's our music? Actually, let's go to our audio events, not our bus. Let's do some music. Well, I guess I don't really like. I haven't done an interactive music hierarchy. We're going to be going a lot more over this in Game Audio 2. If you want to take that next semester, we're going to focus a lot more. So Game Audio 2, just by the way, for next semester, it's going to be focused on a lot more of the interactive music side of things, and also it's going to be much more project based, where we're going to basically have some capital projects throughout the semester. But I've not spent a lot of time with interactive music yet, so I can't really speak to that. But basically, it's, if we were to play it, we can well, whatever. If I have just like let's just do some ambient stuff. Let's just pull up some ambiences, ambient backgrounds, regions. So this is our switch container. So if we had our cave going right here, if we want to switch our states, so we can actually, you know, practice with our states inside and outside right here, but it's only going to affect certain things. So it probably isn't going to affect the region cave right there if you're inside or outside the house. But you can experiment with the differences here. Cool. So that's, I mean, that's like, just to recap, that one's actually not that complicated for doing switch states, because we don't really need to do any even custom coding on this thing. All we have to do is add, well, in this case, we're using a trigger to do that. You could use a custom script to change the state based off of some other environmental, but in this case, we're just changing the state based off of as a function of our location. So if we walk into, say, that's lighthouse or this wizard's house, that's when it changes right there. So whatever the magic house, when you cross that one right there. So that one's a pretty straightforward one. All you have to do is add the AK state script, because the state is the state controller right here, and then it's going to enter, and then AK state for exit, and then define the exit. And that's really all there is to that one. So pretty straightforward. I think that one's actually pretty stinking easy, because there's actually no code along with that one right there. So I'm going to save this one, and let's move on. So let's jump over to setting game parameters. So in this time, what we want to do is set some RTPCs. In this case, what we're going to look at is changing the ambience as a function of daytime. So how do we actually determine the daytime? Well, they have these things called game controllers that these scripts that they write that basically are kind of like the master controllers for the rest of the project. But if we look at world setup and sun, so in this case, what they've done is we're going to use the sunlight is going to be defined by they wrote this thing right here, the day-night cycle script. And this is something custom. You can probably download one of these things too. But basically, this is not something that was written by Wwise or anything like that. It's just a time of day script. So this one, what it does is it changes the color of the light based off of the time of day, and that time of day is controlled by this other object somewhere, some other script, some game controller script in there somewhere. I don't know where it is, but that actually controls what the time of day is, and it goes from 0 to 24. So what we can do is we want to create an ambience that mimics what happens during the light, and so we can see that it goes from dark to daylight back. Actually, they created this gradient thing, this ambient color. So the color of the environment changes based off of the time of day. And what we want to do is we want to mirror this effect, so that if we're at night, we want to have like frogs playing and maybe just some quieter sounds. And then during the day, you might want to have like birds, because birds aren't usually around at night. So we want to be able to control something like that. So to do that on our side, we want to use what's called a blend container. And we haven't really talked about this one yet, but in our objects that we have along here, the one of them that we have right here is a blend container. And we spent a lot of time on most of these other ones, like the switch, the actor mixer, the random, the sequence containers, just general sound effects, the switch containers. But what we haven't done is we haven't spent any time on this blend container. So they already have one built out for us for this ambient. And so if we look at the ambient, let's see, ambience background, elements day or night. So we see that they're using these blend containers right here. And let's see what else they have here. I think this region village is a pretty good one. So what they do is, just a kind of quick side tutorial, because I don't know why it wasn't included in the 101 stuff, but because it seems like it's pretty common. But we have our blend container, and it looks kind of like most of the other objects, or most of the other containers that we've had before. But this one, what you do is you drag in two different ones. In this case, they have a random container, they have a day and a night. And they're going to drag these are our sources in here. So these are our day sounds. We have ambient village day. It looks like they only have one of these going right now, but they have like an ambient village day right here. So if we wanted to hear that, we might have something else me controlling that right now. So I might not be able to hear that. But going back to, let's get back to this container, that we have our day and our night, basically, and then our night. These are just our ambient night sounds right here. So what you do is, if you want to create a container, you drag your sources in here, and then you drag them in over here. And if you remember, we had like the sequence track. The sequence track, basically, you would put the stuff, the order that you want things to be in sequence. Well, the blend track kind of does something similar. We want it to go from night to day to night. So you drag in the night, the day, and the night. And this is what they call background right here. So they've created a track. You can actually have multiple different tracks going on here at the same time. So in this case, we just have background, but you could have other like sound effects elements. Like I think that's what these elements right here. These are like, they separated it into ambient regions and then elements, but you could also have those all in one right here. And this is what we want to look at right here, this thing called blend tracks. If I click on the blend tracks, it's going to pull up this editor right here. And well, actually, let's just do this. Well, no, I'll leave it for right now. what we've done here is when I pull this up, it's going to create a night, day, night, a night, day, night sequence right here. So this is the night to day to night because it goes from 0. If we define 0 being midnight, and then it goes through the hours of the day, and then it goes all the way up to 24. So we count it on a 24-hour clock. So we can see that noon is pretty much right here, and we want to transition between these right here. And so you can adjust where you want this. So like, what is that at like 8 o'clock or like 7 a.m. is when we transition from the night to the daytime. So starting around 6 a.m. to about 8 a.m., that's when we see that the transition, and it's a gradual change. And we can adjust that if we want to change this, over here if we need to. But they already have it set up, so I'm not going to touch any of this thing right here. But this time of day right here, this is what's controlled by our RTPC. So this is what we want to have. So based off of, so this right here is what's going to be controlled with our real-time parameter controller. So based off the time of day, this will cruise along and go from night to day to night right there. And it looks like there's probably other ones. So that it looks like they have them probably in these day or night elements right here. Looks like they didn't actually, it looks like they've got them here, but they didn't actually use them. So if we wanted to add ambient day elements in here, so let's see, birds, fauna. So you could actually, if we wanted to just have these, so if we wanted to add, what I would do something like, oh, okay. So they're, I don't know how I don't know how they have this stuff set up. So I'm not going to mess with it just because I'm not entirely sure how that was going. But we can add those into our blend tracks if we wanted to. But I think I'm not going to mess around with that. I just want to kind of, I had not spent any time with the blend tracks before, so I wanted to get kind of comfortable with that. But that's the important thing right here. And if we look at our RTPCs right here, we can choose our time of day. So right now it's at 0.3, but if I edit here, we can just control it from everywhere. So that's the same thing as doing it right here. We can control our time of day as a simulation when we're playing this thing. So this is what we want to control from Unity. So let's figure out how to do this thing. So let's hop over here, and we're going to attach a custom script on here. And what we want to do is, I don't know which one that must be, remove component. Let's add a component, and we're gonna make our own. We're gonna make a new script. So let's delete that, and I'm gonna call this one new script. Oops. And we'll call this our what is this? What do I want to say? Set time of day RTPC. Cool. So if we look under just my, it's kind of weird. Like I don't say it's not weird, but whenever you create, say, a brand new like custom script or anything, it always defaults by putting everything all the way in the root directory of your project. So you should probably throw this one into the scripts over here, and you can actually make subfolders for these kind of different thing. But just for for keeping things simple, I'm going to keep set time of day RTPC in the main directory just because it's easier to find for right now. So we can see that back it's over on our sun right here, and let's go in and let's edit this thing. Okay. So the first thing we want to do is create, let's get rid of this. And there's like, when we're looking at our types, like here, we want to create an object type right here. We saw that like, and this is some of the code stuff that may be not obvious. And if it's not, that's fine. Just kind of follow along, and not if it's not obvious, but if you don't understand the code stuff at all, don't worry about it. But basically what it's going to allow us to do is we've got this object type. We can say AK. So that's like basically saying it's audio kinetic. And so the audio kinetic has this entire library built out. And the reason that this is available to us is because in our thing, we have this Wwise initializer. With this Wwise initializer set up in your scene, it's going to allow you to have access to all these kind of other audio kinetic types. And so that's what we've got, these objects. And so what we've got here is we've got an AK. And then what we want to do is we want to do, well, I don't know why I don't know why it's AK Audio Connect then Wise. I don't know what else there would be. I don't know why it's not just Wise, but and basically these are like drilling down into sub categories, sub methods of this. And what we want to go down into is these are like the different things we can control. Like and these look pretty familiar to us because these are all the things that we do, the things that we can control inside of Wise. So if you want to like just taking a look at this, we can do trigger, switch, state, RTPC, event. So that like if we recall, that's what we did before last week was this event. So if we want to trigger an event, you just basically call an event right here, and we also can call up a bank. We were talking about managing sound banks, and so we used the AK bank before, but you could also do that inside of here. So there's going to be times where you want to control stuff within a script. And truth is, like, I guess if you get really proficient with this stuff, you'd probably do a lot of the stuff from actual custom scripting rather than using the AK scripts, just because you have a little bit more control over things. But we're looking for this RTPC. So we want to do RTPC. And then we have to name this thing. We have to give this thing a name. So in this case, we want to call it whatever we want, but we're going to call this one time of day RTPC. So this is going to allow us to, and we can call this thing whatever we want to. We just call that. That doesn't need to have the same name between, say, Wise and Unity, but we want to make this thing public so that we actually can assign this thing. So public. There we go. Cool. Just hit Control S, go back over here, and make sure that it does what it's supposed to do. So we should see that we have our little drawer pop up over here that allows us to control the time of day. Come on, there it is. Sweet. So we now have this thing, and it's alive. So let's see. Might have to. Oh, I should have copied this over. Okay, so let's go back into my script here. And what we want to do here is we want this to control. We want this to update. Basically, we want this script right here is going to be running, and what we don't want it to do is tell Wise what the time of day is every frame. You could set some sort of crazy interval, but the basic kind of the two time clocks that you have are, well, not two time clocks, the kind of clocks that you have in the game are going to be just on the start or on an update. And so this happens on every single frame. So every single frame of the game, it's going to update this over to Wise and yeah, just update the information there. So what we want to do in here is we want to add a function to tell to send that information over the time of day over to Wise. And so to do this, we're going to use, let's see, how did I do this? Okay. Sorry, I'm gonna make sure I type this right. Yep, I'm where I need to be. Oh. Let's see. Sorry, I might need to look. I took bad notes here. I was supposed to like time of day RTPC. Okay, so what we're gonna do is call this basically this object that we have up here time of day RTPC. So that's what we that's the one we just created right there, and we want to add a we have two. Well, we can either do set global value RTPC. Let's see. So we can do a couple different things. We can set global value, or set value here. And these two have important implications. So set global value is going to set the global, is going to set this game parameter for any object that uses it. Basically, there's multiple objects can have RTPCs on them. And what we don't want to have happen is having multiple objects competing for the same RTPC in Wise. So if we do the set value, that's going to set it for just this particular object. If we do set global value, it's going to set it for all objects. So basically, this one, the set global value, is going to set Wise the RTPC for any object that's using that. And that's I'd say that's the one we want to use right now. Set global value, and basically it's a function. I know I'm not speaking very coherently. I know that because I'm a little fuzzy on this myself. So what this does is we have this time of day of this object right here. I want to set the value of this thing, and I want to say what is the value set based upon. And so what is controlling this value right here? And the value is going to be controlled by they created this thing called the game monitor, or what is it called? Game controller. Yeah, let's see. Oh, it's called the game manager. Yeah. So they have a thing called game manager. So the game manager is what's controlling the time in the game. So they have a thing called game manager here, and it's got a thing called, where is that? Time of day. So what that does is basically there's some object over here called the game manager, and it controls the time of day. So basically I can ping the time of day to get this, and it's gonna set the value of this thing right here. So I'm gonna save that, and over in our drawer right here, we're gonna say what do we want to control in Wwise? So when this time of day RTP or time of day RTPC, we can say, well, what do we want to control Wwise? Because right now at this point, all we did is we collected the time of day, and it's all set to go, but it's not actually sending it to Wwise yet. So we have to set this thing to Wwise to one of our game syncs. And so under ambient right here, under our game parameters right here, we have time of day. So we have other stuff we could choose, but that's exactly what we want. So with this time of day, now basically we can control this thing is pulling in the time of day and sending it down into Wwise to actually control that. Save this, make sure it works, and let's see if this thing works. I was actually having problems with this yesterday, but hopefully we can get this thing to work this time. So let's go to F6 and look at our profiler over here, and I'm gonna filter this off, and instead of let's see. Oh yeah, so what we're gonna use in this case, instead of the profiler, we're going to use the game object profiler. So the game object profiler allows us to focus on specific objects. And in this case, so this looks like maybe a little different some of the stuff we've seen before. But if I go to my Windows and Game Object Explorer. So what I want to do is I'm going to set up this. Basically, this is what it kind of defaults at. I want to set this. I want to watch a global game object. So I have to set that there. And I want to add something. I want to watch, in this case, I want to watch the time of day. So by doing this, it's going to allow me to watch the time of day. And if I press play, hopefully we can get this thing to work. Like I said, I had problems with this yesterday. So let's press play here. And sync this thing up. There we go. Cool. It's working. So what it's doing right here is we can see that it's sending over the time of day, and it's increasing over time. And actually it goes really fast. So let's move this over a little bit. We can see the color of the light changing as it's getting a little dimmer outside. What time are we at right now? 15, 2 in the afternoon. One of the things you can do with this game, you can actually cheat a little bit. Let's go escape here, and they have the time of day. So if I'm dragging this up and down, I can adjust. You can kind of haul ass through the time of day. So this is midnight, this is noon, and it's late at night. And you can hear the ambience change as a function of that. So what that allows us to do is see indeed that we now have our time of day is syncing with Wwise, which is huge. And it's crazy to think that this is happening. Whatever, it depends on what the frame rate of the game is, but it's happened. Oh, that calculation is being sent over to Wwise at every single frame right there. So pretty stoked on that. That's cool. So you could use that again, understanding the hardcore concept of that script to set time of day RTPC. The script is a little confusing. I mean, it makes sense, but if you don't code, I can see this being really confusing right here. So basically it's just saying time of day is setting this one right here, set the global value of that, and pull the information in from this game manager time of day. This stuff right here, this is something that you wouldn't be expected to know. You'd have to talk with your programmers to figure out how to pull this off. If they have like what's called a game manager, which I've not seen before, but there must be some sort of game manager object that's in here somewhere that's controlling the time. That's actually what's defining the time of day. So cool. All right. So we've talked about switch states and RTPCs, and that can be yeah, you can attach that RTPC to all sorts of different things.
I
So let's
had
click.
one quick question.
Yeah, what do you got?
So in Wise, uh, where you were using that game object profiler, I
Yes,
don't see in my Wise where it says game sync watches.
this one you don't see this right here.
Yeah, what's that under game sync monitor?
Yeah. So
Yeah, I don't see that.
let's see. Okay, so that's weird because mine just defaulted to that. So I'm trying to think, like, because it doesn't seem to be a separate tab or window thing. So, and that's under your game object profiler, your F12.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, but you are seeing this thing up here.
Let me see. Oh yeah, I am.
But is it the whole? So the whole window is just that, and you don't see any of this stuff down here.
Like there is the game sync or the game sync monitor little tab,
Yeah.
but in it, it just doesn't say anything about the watches.
Hmm. So let's see. I mean, you might want to just do like reset factory default. I'm just wondering. Well, I don't think you because we've never really played with this one that much, so I
Mhm.
can't imagine. But I mean, if this thing got screwed up, like went away, then if I go whoop, reset factory layouts, select all. Okay, yes. If you get screwed up, this is what helps me. If you don't know where things are, so when I revert back to factory layouts, this is what I get. And I guess what you can also do, so if this one is gone, so game sync monitor is gone, then I'll go to views. There's game sync monitor right here, Command Shift N. And let's see if I don't remember how to dock stuff. That's this bottom there, like that. So that's one way you can do. Oh, wait, but you said you didn't have game sync watches. So your game sync monitor doesn't have game sync watches. Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's what it is. I just pulled it up and it shows game sync, game object, and like that value, but I think maybe it's just having like a problem connecting to whatever
Hmm.
that is. I don't.
Yeah, so I mean,
Seems like
basically,
something like that.
yeah. So this is the kind of the factory layout on this thing, and so for mine, this thing kept vanishing on me. So like, I just had to go back in here and just pull back up Game Object Explorer, and I guess if I wanted to dock that one over here on the left, do something like that. But
I think
basically,
that might be it too. Like I don't. I might not have the game object explorer.
so look under Views, and you should see it. Or it says Control Shift E, and that pulls it up in a separate window, like a floating window. And then you can grab the
Hmm.
little tab and you can dock it over there.
Oh, okay.
I
Hmm.
haven't really played. I haven't played with this one very much. This thing right here, but I've watched some. They've done some stuff. Basically, what this is doing is this will take in your 3D information from Unity and push it over into here, so you can actually see your objects moving around in 3D space. It's pretty cool, and they do things like object, like reflections and occlusions and that kind of stuff. I barely understand, but they do some of the cool spatial stuff with this thing, which is pretty badass. But I've just not spent much time with it. How are you doing, Ramon? You find it, or are we still stuck?
No, my thing is for some reason I just don't see the game object explorer.
I think it's a version difference because
That
in
could be.
2019.2.5, which is the most recent Wise, I don't see the Game
Oh,
Object
is that?
Explorer
Yeah,
either.
I've only I tried doing when I was doing this with the most modern version of Wise with the older version, whatever the Wise Adventure game. It doesn't sync very well. Like I couldn't get it to sync if I was using 2019.2 point whatever. So I had to so just to make things so I could actually do the tutorials, I went back and I'm doing the point 1.4. So yeah, I guess I don't know. I haven't played with it enough. Well, I can't. I don't want to switch right now, but that very well could be the case. So if
Yeah,
that's the
I think
case, yeah, it
that's
might
it.
be in a different place. So this is the value, I guess, and I haven't done it with this section, but what I've been trying to do is on all, at least up through 1, 2, and 3, I would go through and I would do it with their tutorial, and then I would go create my own game, and I would use the same principles with my own game with the most modern version of it to try and figure it out. And that also really tends to set it in stone, the concepts. But yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know off the top of my head what it's going to look like with the most modern version of it. It's got to be buried in there somewhere. It just might be under a different window instead of where we're looking at it. But because you got to
Yeah,
be
so
able to
I
look at the
think the
same.
only thing there is that um like there's just still a way to monitor or like I guess profile, look at how that RTPC is changing your audio
Yeah,
in there.
you might be
So
able to. Yeah, I mean, you might be able to. Let's just take a look, see if we can do it on
Well,
a
I
profiler.
think I think you go to the three little dots under the game sync monitor to browse for objects, and then you can just find the time of day object.
Here, if you want to, why don't you share? Do you if you want? Do you mind sharing your screen if you want to?
Oh, I don't even have the project load up. I just have a blank
Or
Wise
but
loaded up.
Ramon, if you want to,
Oh,
say, if you want to show yours, so we can all take a look at it.
yeah.
Okay, so game object filter, game sync. Yeah, that looks
And
pretty.
just try typing in time of day, see what happens.
It's
Damn.
I think it's under like yeah, just start there. Um, yeah, it's weird.
Oh, I guess because it's not technically an object, it's a state.
Right. So, on that one, what was I using? I was just choosing the. What was I using? I was doing it with. Let me get back to mine. I can see if I can find a game object explorer. So it's called like the watches. It's global game object. So let's see, game sync monitor, game sync watches. So okay, that one, yeah. Click on that. Oh, it only does name or ID. Okay, let's just try it. Yeah, so it's like global. I mean, maybe you don't even need anything. So just escape out of that and like just see maybe you don't need anything there. And then at the bottom, like for our game syncs, and yeah, I guess you do need global game object. Okay, I'll have to take a look at that. I'll run through this myself with the most modern version of it and see if I can get this thing to work and see if I can do it as well. But so we'll have to put that one on hold for right now just because I don't know as I off the
that's
top of my head.
something that I was like following along with and just couldn't find that, but I mean still like kind of just went through the whole
Yeah.
lesson and like everything works and things. I just wasn't able to like
Yeah,
test it out
I did
like
exactly
that.
the same thing. I was having a problem with this thing last night, so I just like I knew the game was working, but I couldn't actually get the visualizer to work with it, so it was stuck for me too. But got it to work. But so like that's something to figure out, of course, going forward, because that's important because that's you're gonna get stuck on that. Because I think being able to like one of the important thing here is being able to monitor, and I'm finally getting more comfortable with being able to monitor the connection between Wise and well any game, but Unity in this case. So it's coming along, but I think that's really powerful when you're trying to troubleshoot, just like in any recording studio or something like that. Being able to troubleshoot and figure out why something's not playing or what's controlling what. And the profilers are a big deal. So and I've spent very little time with the game object profiler. I just don't like that one's just a strange one to me. But the other profiler I spent a lot more time with, and I actually kind of comfortable with that one. Okay, well so let's move on for a little bit and let's take a look at how we set up these switch states. So if we go over to switch, so I'm going to go to this other audio kinetic certification 301 5 switch change Wise type. And what we're going to do is if we actually go back to our profiler, I can leave that one on right here. But if I just go to profiler right here, and in this case, let's look at turn off switch. Let's look at switches instead. And what we would expect to have happen here is when I'm playing the game, I'll pull this off to the side, is that when we're playing the game, that as our player plays, we should be able to, when we run between the dirt and the grass, we should see the switch state change here, but we do not. And what we want to do is we want to have this thing do a state change between dirt and gravel or whatever, grass or whatever they've got going on there. So what we need to do is we need to create a script to control that. Or actually, we've got a script, but we need to modify it so that it actually does a state change based off of this. So this one's a little bit confusing for me too. So we're going to use our post-wise event script that we used before. So this post-wise event, which I still left in the main directory, this is the one we created for lesson 4. I'm going to use this one right here. And so we see that it didn't work. And if I click on this one right here, it's called the road space right here. We can see that on this, they've created this script right here called sound material script. In fact, if we just double click on it, let's take a look what the script looks like. This thing's called sound material. And what they've done here is essentially every time, all it does is saying they created a public type right here where it's going to say AKWise switch material. So this is the switch state right here that we've seen before. So this is how they're going to control Wise, and then it's going to say material. So this is the name of it right here, and that therefore right here it's got the material and the surface type dirt. So basically you could go under here and they've got all the different materials from Wise set up here, and they went through and basically if we go on here, this is type grass, and if you go through the entire level, every single one of these is just going to have a basic sound material script that says that's going to have this surface type right here, and we want to be able to use that and we want to be able to control that. This states what it is, but it doesn't control the switch. So what we need to do is watch find some way to determine what surface are we on, and then therefore send this information down to Wise so it triggers that switch state. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our script that we were using, the post-Wise event we were doing the footsteps on the animation. So what we did is every time, well, actually we can go back and look at the animation stuff. If we look at our animation editor right here and on our player, and we were doing what, sprint. So this is our sprint one right here. So one right here, play footstep sound, play footstep sound. So it plays this function, play footstep sound. So every time our footstep down, it goes plays footstep sound, play footstep sound. And that play footstep sound was inside of this post-Wise event. So that was inside of here. I think this is the original one. Yeah. So play footstep sound right here. It says my event, post, and then game object. So that's on the player itself. So basically it's saying event post. And we can say what footstep sound we want to have happen right there. So what we need to do is we need to modify this one right here so that it's gonna change so that it's gonna monitor what the footstep is and change the switch state if it needs to, and then play that footstep sound based off of what the terrain is right now. Because like the last time it was just playing some generic footstep sound. So what we want to do is, this one's confusing to me. I have to copy this one pretty close. So I want to delete the play footstep sound function, and yeah, I don't need this. Let me see. Let me just double check here. Yep, cool. Post. Sorry, I need to look at this. Okay. Sorry, I gotta look at this thing. I gotta look at the code here for a second. Actually, I'm gonna undo that. Let's go here. So, what they've got here is under play footstep sound. When we call this, we want to add so they've got a game manager that we used before for controlling the time of day, but they also have a player manager, and the player manager does this thing where basically it's got a toe left and toe right, and it's checking every time there's a footstep sound. And so what it's going to do in this case, what we want to do is every time that we're going to use the footstep left, it's going to check what the surface is that it's on here. And so this is done upstream, and I don't understand this thing completely. But what we're going to do is we're going to use this thing called Player Manager. Let's see. Yeah. Double check I'm in the right spot. So we got this Player Manager, and what we want to do is we want it to check the foot left, and it's got a function inside of that one called get material. And so that get material is checking down in on that material that was created on each of those surfaces. It's checking the Wwise material, and then it's going to report that material. So, and then, and we want it to set value of, and attach it to this object that we're on right now. And yeah, so basically this is the function. So the function checks the surface every single time and then therefore changes it. So let's save this thing, make sure it works. Cool. And let's monitor this over here. So we're on states, right? Or switches. Yeah, that's right. Cool. So let's see if this thing works. So, I broke it. It's not seeing the states. Oh, because I'm not syncing, right? Nope. Something's wrong. Oh, yeah. Player. Footsteps. Did I not post Wwise event? Or did I screw up there? What did I basically I don't have a receiver there. Trying to think through what I could screw up there. I'm not very strong with this. Sorry. This is the one I kind of conceptually understand it, but there's a lot of little details that kind of still hang me up on here on this one. So time of the RTP. No, not that one. Post Wwise event. Let's double check that my animation is set up correctly. Animation sprint. So play footstep sound. Yes. Basically, I need to assign the player to the game object, but I don't know where, like, or to the script, like in that drawer. I wonder if I need to add that script just to the. No, I shouldn't. I don't think I need to add that script to the player, but I'll try it. So to player, let's add player, project, post Wwise event, my event. Oh, that's what it was. Pretty sure I got it now. We don't need this. Let's see. No, I don't know. I'm not getting it. Damn it. Let's see if I can look back and see if I can figure out where I screwed up. All right. Well, I mean, what I have to do is go through rather than have you watch me just do this. I mean, I basically have to go through and run through the thing again. I'm probably missing one step in there. Let me see if I can just glean what information is happening there when I press play. Their animation play footsteps sound has no receiver. It was in there, wasn't it? Play footsteps. No, stop. Damn it. I'm sorry. I don't understand my. It has no receiver. Seems right to me, but I don't know. I might have that screwed up somewhere. All right, so I can't really I have to run through it and troubleshoot it again. And actually, on my notes, I must be missing a step in there because I don't understand that one very well. So I'm gonna go and stop it there because I don't really know. But yeah, so basically, then going on there is they go on in the text on understanding the scope of things. So there's going to be a little bit more information on the global versus the local stuff on when you're setting the values. And honestly, I like for me to actually just blast it to you, I don't understand it well enough to actually coherently do it. I understand conceptually, but for me to drill down and talk about the actual code is really tricky for me to do it. So I'm going to defer to the text on that one just because I need to read through it a bunch more times right there. But essentially what we're looking at here is controlling those three things. So just in summary, we talked about switches, RTPCs, and states. And basically attaching these. For me, the switches is still super confusing. I'm still really fuzzy on that one. But the other two make a lot of sense. They're actually, I feel like they're pretty straightforward for the RTPCs and for the whatever states. So cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it here. And what I want you to do is I'm going to go ahead and create, when we sign off here, I'm going to create the assignment. So I'd like you to get through at 5 by the end of this week. Through number 5 by the end of this week. So if you've gotten some of them, you should be good. But these take probably, I don't know, it takes me an hour to get through it, through one of these lessons, to go nice and slow. So if you haven't started these things, that's about a 5, keep going with it because we're going to do 6 next class. But by the end of, by Friday, I'd like you to be up through at least 5. And so that's about, say, 5 hours of work, 5 or 6 hours of work this week. If you haven't even started on any of these, if you're already started on these things, you're doing well. It's only going to take you a couple more hours to get kind of caught up to this. If you're on par, I would recommend looping through this more than once and try applying these to your own games. Create a dummy game and see if you can apply these concepts to it. Because what we want to do is the long game here is we want to create a little 3D world demo that people can play, that they can run around in, and that you'll use that as your portfolio. So you don't need to be really, really that strong at it, just because I'm not really strong at it at all. But we're kind of muddling our way through this. We're kind of getting through it and just understanding kind of the key concepts so that when you decide that you do need to use it, you can fall back to this and defer back and understand a little bit how the stuff kind of connects together. So with that, let's call it a couple minutes early today, but I'll stick around if anybody has any questions. But yeah, I guess have at it and rock and roll.